Hello and welcome to Talk Truth. My name is Corey Huntsberger. I've got my father, Alan Huntsberger, in the studio. We're going to start off with our foundational verse. The earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord. For he laid its foundation on the seas and established it on the rivers. Psalm 24, 1 and 2. Love that verse. So powerful, so full of authority. It really is a great way to start the day, right, Dad?
Yeah, it tells us that God is our praise. He's our God. He has done great things for us, and he's willing to continue to do it. The God who owns heaven and earth is not just a distant and mighty. He's personal. He's our God, and he's our praise, and everything we have comes from his hands. Jesus brings this truth closer when he says, I am the vine and you are the branches. Think about that for a moment. I am the vine, you are the branches. And the one who remains in me and I in him produces much fruit, because you can do nothing without me. That's John 15:5. So the Lord is your source, your strength, your health, your joy. He's not only your creator, he's your life. And when you remain in him daily, abiding in his word, your life, he promises, produces lasting fruit. So today, remember, the God who owns the heavens and the earth is your praise and your life. Stay continued to Jesus daily, for apart from him, we can do nothing.
Pastor Alan, throw in the fire. I love it. Let's get on with our guest. We're excited to have him back, Mr. Shawn Buckley. Hey, Shawn, how are you?
Oh, good. I'm thankful to be here, and I really like what Alan just shared. I can't get my head around, I cannot understand how, God, who knows everyone's thoughts, knows exactly what's going on, actually is interested in each one of us. But, if you start paying attention, you'll see his activity in your life everywhere. So you can't deny that he's interested. But I don't understand it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I have this little thing in my life. It's called finding a parking space. We've probably talked about it a little bit in the past. But wherever I go, people say, oh, you better park back here. It looks like parking's bad. You're not going to find any space. And I go, no. Father God has a parking space for me right up front. And, almost all the time, once in a while I have to drive around the block once to find that space. But you know what? It's there. And that is my little, however you want to call it, my little reassurance that, Father God cares about us, and he cares about us even in the silly details of a parking space. And I just bring that out. Now, if everybody was praying for a special parking space, I don't know what Father God would do, but I'll leave that up to him.
Well, now I know why I can never find a parking space, because Alan's taking up all the good ones.
Indeed.
Well, Shawn, the reason why we had you on is because you're going through some incredible changes. You're working on the Health Charter Tour and also the world's greatest health show. And I know that's been keeping you really busy. And before we even started recording, you were telling us some incredible stories that you're collecting. We're going to go ahead and give you the floor to give us an update of what's happening with the Health Charter Tour. And I want to hear about some of these stories that you've been collecting.
Yeah, no, and I think it's important to share the stories and kind of share this climate of fear that we're in. So I'm with the Natural Health Product Protection Association. We're at nhppa.org, and please subscribe so you can participate. But we're putting on, starting on October 4th, an online health show. We're actually traveling across Canada for the Health Charter Tour and having live events that you can participate on. But the most important part is you'll be able to watch online. And when we say health show, most health shows, they've got like health experts and stuff like that talking about, vitamin D and the like and other health things that are important. And we're going to do that. But we're going to do something that's really different. And this is what I want to talk about, is in Canada, truthful health information on how people are being helped, it's illegal to share for those that know the information. The people that know the information are the practitioners helping people and the manufacturers of the products. But they will get hammered and put out of business by Health Canada. They'll even be jailed if they share truthful health information with you. They can't even share, government-funded clinical trials and things like that. Like there's this censorship of health information to keep us in this pharmaceutical model. And so we thought, well, we're not in the business. We can have ordinary Canadians come and share their stories of how they're transformed. And I'm just going to share a couple of stories so that you understand the type of thing that we're talking about. So I'm interviewing a lady who, at the time, she's working for Health Canada in Ottawa. She's in their biologics department. She's a PhD immunologist. And she has chronic fatigue syndrome so severely that all she can do is work. She can't have any life outside of work. She cannot sleep at night. She can nap a little bit during the day and actually has to nap at work at Health Canada just to try and get through the workday. And, just so you understand how bad this is, she got fed up one day and said, I am going to go out for dinner with a friend. So she takes the day off of work so she can nap as much as she can during the day. She goes out for supper. She passes out in the restaurant during the meal and face plants into her food. And that ended any attempt going forward to ever go out at night because she would pass out. She shared with us that she would have to nap at the end of the day at Health Canada. So she's at the Health Canada office. She's having a nap because it's unsafe for her to drive home. It's a 30-minute drive home. Without having the nap, she's worried she would pass out in her car and hurt someone. And she's totally disabled. And she was quite clear during the interview, I would have killed myself if I didn't find a solution. Now, she said the top doctor in Canada at the time for chronic fatigue syndrome is in Ottawa, and she sees this doctor, and there's no treatment. There is zero treatment for chronic fatigue syndrome. So she's in this hopeless state. She comes across a remedy. For her, it was St. John's wort. It solves her problem. Within 24 hours, she's sleeping at night. And this is decades ago. So it basically saved her life. She's clear about that. She went from being completely disabled to being, alive. So she's gone out of this hopeless state and is now living a happy, vibrant life. Those types of stories have to be told. Because Health Canada is in the process of trying to take remedies like that away to protect us. They just talk about risk. And we need to get into the public awareness. Wait a second, there's benefits. It's common sense. If something has benefits and you're trying to help people, how do we manage these types of products? You can't just say there's risk. Let's protect people from any type of risk without looking into the benefits. Because the truth is there's a large number of us that are only alive today because of these products, and a larger number that are, have health because of them.
I just want to, help people understand that God supplies remedies for our health, and has nothing to do with making money like Big Pharma.
Alan, I think that, in fact, I don't think, I know that as a fact, that if we could be freed from this pharmaceutical model, so that if we could be freed to share truthful health information, if we could be free to actually engage with these other, treatment modalities like homeopathic doctors and naturopathic doctors and traditional Chinese practitioners, we would likely end chronic illness. So the pharmaceutical drugs are not there to solve chronic illness. They're there to address symptoms, but because they're synthetic chemicals, they create their own imbalances in the body and their own side effects. But the business model is to basically, here's the reality is we deliberately structure our food supply so that we're undernourished. It's no secret that our current farming practices, the way we fertilize and stuff like that, most of the essential nutrients are not in our food. So they've measured, food 50 years ago, 100 years ago, a cup of spinach would have 200 grams of iron, and now it, might have, 1 gram or something. You couldn't eat enough spinach grown today to get the iron you need, whereas before you might have to be careful. So we're chronically undernourished, and when we're undernourished, we get sick with chronic diseases. And then we manage those diseases with synthetic chemical drugs that will never cure them, because the model is to treat the symptoms, not actually make us healthy again. And so we make a lot of money for a lot of people. And isn't it interesting that that's the only model? So health is provincial jurisdiction. So under our Constitution, the provinces have authority over health, which is why they run the hospitals and why they manage the doctors and other healthcare professionals. The federal government has no jurisdiction over health, except they use the criminal law power to say, we've decided that only Health Canada can say what you can use as a treatment, which in itself is quite amazing. Like, we might agree for dangerous chemicals like the pharmaceutical drugs, which are a leading cause of death in Canada, taken as prescribed, that they are dangerous enough that maybe the criminal law power should be used to restrict them. But when we're talking about St. John's wort or ginger tea and things that we eat that also we've used historically to treat ourselves and God intended for us to use to treat ourselves, that's not criminal. So Health Canada has no right to say, we're regulating those and you cannot take them. But what Health Canada does is for serious health conditions, it's structured itself so that only chemical drugs are approved to treat serious health conditions. And then the federal government says to the provinces, so it takes all this money and says, well, yeah, you have jurisdiction over health, but I'm going to give you billions and billions and billions of dollars for health, but you have to follow the Canada Health Act, which obligates them to provide this pharmaceutical treatments. So if you go to the hospital with anything serious, the only treatments you're going to be offered are chemical drugs, so for cancer, for heart disease, for serious mental illness, for serious arthritis, you name it. The only legal treatments, and this is all by design, are chemical drugs. The only treatments paid for by the taxpayer are chemical drugs, and then Health Canada actively attacks any other treatments because they are illegal, even though we've structured it to make them illegal. You can't get through the approval process unless you have a patent. So it's this whole game of sickness. And it's kind of like there's this literal cloak of sorcery over us. And, in the Bible, the word sorcery is the root word for pharmakia. So which includes our chemical drug model. And I think that we're about to turn the corner, but which is why we're doing this health show, is we have to let Canadians understand, first of all, if they're suffering from a chronic illness and the medical system has no answer, there's answers. So don't lose hope. You just have to start looking elsewhere. I mean, if I can share a non-tragic story, oh, sorry.
Yeah. Let me just do on the other hand. And on the other hand, if somebody does have a natural product, we've seen this all the time. They show a bit of a video and they make a statement about this will cure your whatever. Just watch the video. The video is not a short video. It goes on and on and on and on and on about this product. And then, comes to the end. And the end is, now you got to sign up and here's the dollars it's going to cost you and everything else. So what happens is, if people actually do have a natural product, I think the way they go about trying to sell it or get rid of it or whatever also turns people off, because people just, I'm not going to listen to this. This is just a money-making scheme. So it loses the credibility of, I believe, what you're talking about, because I believe, yeah, go ahead.
So Ellen, I for 30 years have practiced in this field, and almost every one of my clients, either they were alive or healthy or had a family member alive or healthy because they came across a natural remedy and they felt morally, compelled to share it with people, and then they're being attacked by Health Canada. I don't know anyone I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know anyone in my world that's ever done that. And so, I feel the need to caution is here we've got people that are I think God's using them to help other people that are not doing that. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about. We see these sensational little teasers, and then we've even learned not to click them because there's this 20-hour-long presentation before you could get to anything, and you can't fast forward through it. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know who does that, and that's not in my world, and that's not what I'm talking about. But, we have companies like True Hope, where there's about 30 government-funded, peer-reviewed, published journal articles on how it's literally the best treatment in the world for bipolar disorder, for major depressive disorder. It works super well on anxiety, ADHD. It works so well that governments around the world, including the Alberta government, funded a double-blind clinical trial run by the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Calgary out of Children's Hospital. So, here I'm in Alberta. Well, my provincial government coughed up money to run a double-blind clinical trial because the data on it was so compelling, they felt it was in the public interest. And there's 30 peer-reviewed published journal articles, all funded by government, not a single one by this company. The company can't share that with you. It's 100% censored. And they used to have links on their website, but now that Health Canada, it's $5 million a day fines. They've had to take it down. So it's a really interesting world we're in where we can't speak the truth. And like, I get there's fraud out there and there's adulteration, but the law protects it. We're not talking about that. We all agree if people are going to be fraudulent, let's protect against that. If people are going to adulterate a product, let's protect against that. And let's make sure that things are made in a clean environment and, good manufacturing practices. I don't know anyone that disagrees with that. But when we basically go further and regulate these products so much that basically they are taken away from us, and yet we rely on them for our health, and we're doing this to protect the chemical drug industry and keep faith in our public health system, I have a moral problem with that. I think that's a form of slavery, and that this is not what God intended for us.
Amen. What's your hope that will conclude when you go across the country? What's your hope that what will resolve? What will be resolved, or could be resolved?
Alan, I can tell you what Teresa and I are praying about, and we're asking, other people to pray for, is we're praying that God will use this as a light to shine into the darkness. We are praying that when people speak, so when they tell their stories and when they're being interviewed, that everyone involved, that it's God that speaks through them. Mm-hmm. So, it's really general, Alan. People are, they don't know the truth. They don't understand what's happening. And so we just want God to share the truth with people. And then he can worry about what comes from that. But we just feel that we're supposed to be letting people share their stories and be getting the truth out. So, to be more specifically, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could arrive at a place where we have reasonable regulation, where we actually ask the question, how do we get good health outcomes? Because we never ask that when we're setting up our regulatory environment. We set up our regulatory environment, in theory, to prevent us from risk without ever looking into the benefits. And Canada, we have the strictest regulations in the world. Like south of the border in the US, they're completely unregulated. We used to be completely unregulated, except everyone protects against fraud, adulteration, and you got to manufacture things in a proper way. It's kind of interest today. The charter was written in 2008, but one of the health rights it entrenches is the right to refuse a treatment. And it also creates some legal presumptions that are new. So one of the legal presumptions is that the best source of information about whether a treatment works for a patient is the patient. And that's there because let's say your life depends on a treatment. You've done all the approved chemical drugs, and that was, you were suffering so terribly or it was going to lead to death. And you come across a natural product and it's saved your life or restored you to health. And now Health Canada is taking that product away. If you go to court, so if you're one of the few people in Canada that could afford to take Health Canada on in court, if you go to court, Health Canada is going to swamp you with experts saying that, well, there's all these approved drugs and here's how well they work. And so the person doesn't need this other thing. And, if you can still afford it and you don't die before the court, makes a decision, you're still most likely to lose because the court's you actually have to prove to the court that all these other things don't work for you, when there's this wall of experts saying these drugs will work great for you, even though they don't work. And so that type of legal presumption is absolutely necessary to get out of this control grid. And it also forces regulation that's balanced, that takes the benefit into account. So it forces us to actually ask the question, when we regulate natural products, how do we get the best health outcomes? So we're forced to look at the benefits and the risks, and then when we understand benefits and risks, go, how do we get the best health outcomes when we're balancing these two things? Whereas right now, Health Canada is driving them away, driving the price up, and totally threatening to take most of them away right now, saying we need to be protected from them. And that's absolute madness. That will lead to death. It will lead to suffering. It will lead to further oppression. And I don't want to leave that Canada to my kids.
Well, Shawn, you said some great things. I think when you were talking about the spinach, how we used to get so many nutrients from spinach, now we're getting zero. I think that answers Alan's question, how does grandma who's 99 years old, still healthy? Well, she had a lot more years eating good food, nutritious food, before they changed the food and made it terrible for us to eat. I think that answers that question. And then the other one you mentioned was how Health Canada wants to protect us. And I laugh in my head every time I hear that, because I've switched that now to Health Canada wants to protect us from knowing the truth. Really, because it seems like everything is added to their favor. All the things are stacked up. Like, there's no way you can win this, and you know what I mean, kind of a deal, unless people's, and you cannot get rid of the power of a personal testimony. Like when people start telling their personal testimonies of life-changing things that have happened in their life from things that they've done, that is hard to debunk and call misinformation, disinformation, and to censor that. I mean, I'm just sharing my personal story, and that is very difficult for them to, come back from, for sure.
Yeah, no, and I think, what's interesting is I think the big lie is Health Canada has convinced everyone that they're actually protected. So we believe our food supply is safe. We believe our drug supply is safe. We believe we're not, being irradiated too much from cell towers and the like. When if you actually look into any one of those things, you'll come to the opposite conclusion, that you cannot trust them for anything. I mean, I can tell you personally, after dealing with them for 30 years, there's not a single thing I trust them about. And I could just give you example after example. So I think that's the problem, is we want to trust, and it makes it easy for us, but you can't.
Yeah. Powerful stuff.
That's why
Shawn,
you need a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, because I believe through his Spirit, he will guide people to the right thing.
That's the most important part of this is, we can get caught up in this is scary, that is scary. But, the reality is he's numbered your days before he breathed life into you, and he has a specific plan for you. And, you follow him and you will accomplish what he set out for you. And along the way, he's going to teach you about himself. And so that's what it's all about. And yeah, so I don't want people to go away from this with, with a sense of fear or anything, but we are in this, I call it a cloak of sorcery, and we need to pray that God will shine light into the darkness. So,
yep. Shawn, where can people go to find out about this world's greatest health show and everything that you're doing?
Yeah, so go to nhppa.org. Please subscribe to our we do email newsletter once a week, so we don't flood you. It might be twice a week, the odd time if we have a crisis pop up and we need help. Yeah. But we let you know what's happening. We'll let you know how to participate in the tour. If you want to be a speaker, you can apply to be a speaker. And we'll have live events, and the schedule's up there. Because we're literally traveling all across Canada and meeting in Ottawa on October 25th.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Shawn. We really appreciate you. We'll have you back.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate what you guys do. God bless.
Well, there you go. 2 steps forward, 10 steps back. Welcome to Canada, everybody. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know if I'm like numb because you and I hear this kind of stuff happening all the time or what, but that's why I like our verse. God is in control. Man can try and do whatever they want. And when God decides to intervene, he will, and his will be done, right? Because it's like trying to hide all the,
Well, he's going to use you and I or anybody else that's willing to be used. And, the interesting thing for me is the great men like King David, for example. He was the smallest brother. All the other guys were big, strong army guys, and David was a shepherd boy.
Yeah.
Or you take Gideon. He was so afraid that he was hiding in a wine press. And God says, "Hey, mighty warrior, how you doing?" It's like,
he's like
going, "What, me?"
Me?
So that's
you
how
got the
God
wrong guy. Yeah,
exactly.
No, I hear you. All right. You want to help support our mission, keep this kind of conversation and truth on the air, broadcast across our nation. We need your support. We don't take government funds. It's only because of the generosity of those that watch the show that we can continue. You can go to our website, gotalktruth.com, click on donate. Many different ways to give digitally that way. If you'd like to do it through the mail, you can. You can make your gift payable to Heritage Christian Ministries Association and send it to 246 Stewart Green Southwest, Suite 3260, Calgary, Alberta, T3H3C8. All right, Dad, we're out of time. We'll see you guys later.
Love you.